The dark history of witch hunts and women's persecution. Historically, women who lived in secluded areas like streams and lakes were often viewed with suspicion and faced social stigma. These secluded areas were sometimes associated with witchcraft or other forms of deviant behavior. Women living in such places were often marginalized and could be accused of being witches or engaging in illicit activities. In many cultures, women who lived apart from the main population were seen as outsiders and were subject to discrimination and persecution. This was particularly true during periods of witch hunts, where women living in isolated areas were more likely to be accused of witchcraft and face severe consequences. In the early 19th century, the Seneca faced significant cultural and social upheaval due to American expansion. During this time, Handsome Lake, a Seneca prophet, led a revitalization movement combining traditional Seneca beliefs with elements of Christianity. This new religion, known as the Code of Handsome Lake, aimed to address social issues, but also led to witch hunts within the community. Those accused of witchcraft faced severe consequences, including social ostracism and, in some cases, execution. However, these witch hunts also played a role in preserving Seneca sovereignty, as the community defended their right to self-governance. Women accused of witchcraft among the Seneca people faced severe consequences. During the early 19th century, accusations of witchcraft often led to social ostracism, loss of status, and in some cases, execution. The witch hunts were part of a broader cultural upheaval, as the Seneca tried to preserve their traditions and sovereignty amid American expansion. One notable incident involved a Seneca chief named Tommy Jemmy, who executed a woman accused of witchcraft in 1821. He was later tried by New York state authorities but successfully defended his actions, asserting the Seneca's right to self-governance. It's a tragic chapter in their history, reflecting the intense pressures and changes the Seneca faced during that period. In the 19th century, witch hunts were less common in Europe and North America compared to earlier centuries. However, there were still isolated incidents and accusations, often tied to social, cultural, or religious tensions. For example, the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts, USA, are a well-known case from the late 1600s, but similar accusations and trials continued sporadically into the 1800s. The worst incident of witch trials in the United States is widely considered to be the Salem witch trials of 1692. These trials took place in Salem, Massachusetts, and resulted in the execution of 20 people and the imprisonment of many others. Over 200 people were accused of witchcraft during this period of mass hysteria and fear. The Salem witch trials are infamous for their severity and the impact they had on the community. They have since become a symbol of the dangers of false accusations and mass hysteria. In the 20th century, the term witch hunt took on a metaphorical meaning, often used to describe campaigns against perceived enemies or threats. The most famous example is the McCarthy era in the United States during the 1950s, where Senator Joseph McCarthy led efforts to identify and persecute alleged communists, often without substantial evidence. While literal witch hunts were rare in the 1900s, the concept of a witch hunt became a powerful metaphor for unjust persecution and hysteria. One of the most brutal witch hunts in history was the Great Scottish Witch Hunt of 1597. This horrific event saw around 400 people accused of witchcraft, and approximately half of them were executed. The hunt was initiated by King James VI of Scotland, who was obsessed with witchcraft and even published a book on witch detection called Demonology. Another particularly devastating incident was the Valais witch trials in Switzerland, 1428 to 1436. During this period, fear and paranoia led to the execution of hundreds of people accused of witchcraft. The trials were marked by extreme brutality, including torture and public executions. These events are stark reminders of the dangers of mass hysteria and the devastating impact of witch hunts on communities. Women who lived together in secluded areas were often unfairly judged and faced social stigma, especially during periods of witch hunts and societal paranoia. These women were frequently accused of witchcraft or other illicit activities simply because of their living arrangements. In many cultures, women who lived apart from the main population were seen as outsiders and were subject to discrimination and persecution. This was particularly true during periods of witch hunts, where women living in isolated areas were more likely to be accused of witchcraft and face severe consequences. Over time, societal attitudes and legal reforms have helped address these injustices. The women's rights movement, which gained momentum in the 19th and 20th centuries, played a crucial role in challenging and changing these perceptions. Legal reforms such as property rights for married women and the right to vote helped improve the status and autonomy of women. Today, while discrimination still exists, there are legal protections and social movements that continue to fight for gender equality and the rights of women. Organizations and advocacy groups work to ensure that women are treated fairly and without prejudice, regardless of their living arrangements. Please subscribe for more content